Hello, this is the Lord's Legion and welcome to a brand new movie review, and as you can see, this is a part of the series known as The Path to Infinity War, where I'm going to be looking back on each and every film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until the release of Avengers Infinity War. And so in this review, we're going to be looking back on Thor The Dark World. And after the release of The Avengers and Iron Man 3, you would assume that Thor The Dark World would be something great, but people believe that Thor The Dark World is the weakest film in the MCU, and is this really the case? Well, let's find out. So Thor The Dark World takes place right after the Avengers left off, as Thor is back on a brand new journey in which deals with an ancient villain known as Malekith, as well as the Dark Elves. As to which the Dark Elves want to consume all of the 9 realms with darkness because they like the darkness or something. And because of how major the threat really is, Thor would have to team up with his younger brother Loki, and hopefully prevent this semi-Ragnarok. And as you can tell by my voice, clearly I'm with the majority on this one, in that Thor The Dark World is by far the weakest movie in the MCU. At least with Iron Man 2, they did have some legitimate ideas for the story, and plus Disney was meddling with Iron Man 2, so it was bound to be a bit of a mess. However, Thor The Dark World had no excuse in being this painfully mediocre, and yes, I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie, but it's just so painfully average. Now, if I am to give the movie praise, it would be due to the fact that both Chris Hemsworth as well as Tom Hiddleston do a fantastic job as Thor and Loki once again. And their relationship continues to be very fascinating, and they do have legitimate chemistry together on screen. And I hate to sound like a Loki fanboy, but I really have to praise how this film handles this character in the movie, because he does have a legitimate story arc in that there is still a chance in that Loki could be redeemed. And just pretty much anything Loki related works in this movie, and easily Tom Hiddleston steals the show here. Malekith as the main villain is beyond a joke. And I don't blame Christopher Eccleston, because really no one could make this role work. Because Malekith is Steppenwolf levels of bad, if not maybe even worse. And when it comes down to MCU villains, none of them can be as bad as Malekith. And when you have a side villain who is all the more threatening and memorable than your main villain, clearly something's wrong here. As for the other Asgardians, they're just there just so that they can be there. And this film doesn't really do that much with the other Asgardians, and that's such a huge shame. I mean, they do explore the dynamic between Thor, Odin and Loki a little more, but these scenes just come and go. Jamie Alexander was supposed to do more as Sif in The Dark World, and unfortunately for her, the film does next to nothing with that character, despite the fact that she was hinted at to have more to do in the sequel. The only real Asgardian who has more to do in this film is Heimdall, and Idris Elba does a fantastic job as always. Sure, he's not one of the main characters, but at the very least he was given his own spotlight in this movie. And much like the first film, the worst part of The Dark World is of course everything to do with Jane Foster as well as the human characters. Because all of them are either there as plot devices, or they just float by just for the sake of being annoying. And again, Thor The Dark World focuses quite a bit of time on Earth, and it's really not necessary because we've already explored Thor's origin story. And even when we do see Asgard or the other realms, they just seem so half-assed, because the realms are either not explored at all, or they just look so plain that it makes you so depressed. Especially the Dark Elves realm, because you know, everything has to be dark with them. The special effects in this movie were fine for the most part, and I'll admit even some of the costume designs were pretty good. Although what is a huge letdown is of course the fact that the fight scenes in this movie are completely bland and forgettable. Sure, one could point out the portal climax, but let's be honest, it felt like a complete gimmick. But in the end guys, there really isn't too much for me to say about Thor The Dark World because it's just so painful. If it wasn't for the relationship between Thor and Loki, chances are I would probably hate the film even more. Because there's no excuse for Thor The Dark World to be this painfully mediocre, and I keep saying the word mediocre because it's just what it is. It's not even one of these films where it's just so bad that it's good either. To me, this film just feels like it exists just for the sake of existing. And unfortunately, Thor 2 doesn't really do a whole lot new. And so for my final verdict for Thor The Dark World, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 because truth be told, it's a complete mixed bag. And if I were you, I'd give this one a skip and go straight to Thor Ragnarok. Even though I do personally find Thor Ragnarok to be a tad bit overrated. World. So what do you think of Thor The Dark World? Is it your least favourite film in the MCU, or is it surprisingly one of your favourites? Comment below and share some thoughts, and as always, thank you guys for watching this video, please like and subscribe, take care and have a good one.